afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's Eric Coffin from the HRA Advisories. I'm here at the September 2019 edition of the Metals Investor Forum, my conferences that happen 3 or 4 times a year. I'm here with one of the companies that I invited, specifically the CEO, Jeff Wilson of Precipitate Gold, and I'm going to preface this talk by pointing out that my late brother and I were actually founders of the company. I have no direct day-to-day involvement anymore, but I'm still a very large shareholder and pretty biased because of that. But I'm also, because I'm a large shareholder, I was very much behind the move to the Dominican Republic, which is where they've been focused lately. They were in one area of the Dominican Republic that I liked a lot. Last year, they added a new arrow to the quiver, if you will, by picking up an extremely strategic piece of ground around almost surrounding the Pueblo Viejo mine, which is one of the world's largest gold mines. It's operated by Barrick and Goldcorp in a Barrick Newmont now in a joint venture. Can you tell us how that came about? I mean, why the decision to pick up this project? I mean, what was the reason? What drove you to do this?
Yeah, it's sort of several answers to that, but to put it into sort of a concise response, we, as you pointed out, we have been in the country since 2012, and our primary asset initially was a project adjacent to Romero's Goldquest Romero project. We have a substantial amount of land there. It's 100% owned and relatively limited holding costs, and we've got a number of drill permits for that project as well. In the last couple of years here, Goldquest has been going through the process of permitting, and that's kind of stalled things a little bit. And it kind of, for a junior exploration company with limited capital, you want to make sure that the impact on money that you spend is likely to bring about a return for investors. And so our feeling with that piece of land is it's very much an optionality play at such time as Romero gets pointed down a path. But in the interim, we were sort of looking for somewhere else that we could focus our efforts, where perhaps permitting and ongoing work would be a little bit more streamlined. Fortunate enough to have one of our directors, Alistair Waddell, who had worked in the Dominican Republic for I think about 10 years, in fact initially with Goldquest, and he sort of came to us as a board and as a management team and was pounding the table pretty hard on an asset, as you point out, essentially surrounding Barrick's Pueblo Viejo. And we looked at that. We saw that there were some pretty interesting and compelling historic drill intercepts, but we're sort of wondering or looking at what's the upside here, what's the real prospective potential. And Alistair was able to sort of guide us towards looking at this a little bit differently than previous operators of that ground had. And we pretty quickly identified a pretty compelling and sizable exploration target that had never really seen any systematic work and certainly hadn't been drilled the way we thought that it should be drilled. And so that set us down a path to focus our efforts into that part of the country.
And I find it interesting. I mean, what you're focused on the western side of the property is what's called the lithocap. Lithocaps occur at the top of hydrothermal systems, and generally they don't have a lot of juicy, interesting stuff in them themselves. They're important because they're recognized as being the top of the system, which generally, if you're standing on a lithocap, you're standing on a hydrothermal system that's essentially completely preserved. Otherwise, the lithocap would be gone. And I know that seemed to be a big part of Alistair's reasoning, like you guys got to look at this target. And I think it's the kind of target, because it's one of those big kind of blind box targets that, I think you're probably getting bigger companies even now, even this early, kind of looking at it going like, we got to look at that thing. It's right next to PV, and it's Pandora's box right now. We don't know what's under that lithocap. I mean, do you feel like you're going to or are getting that sort of attention?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the obvious default from a lot of investors in the market that if we find something interesting, Barrick's the obvious candidate to come knocking, and certainly that would be just fine by I think a lot of our shareholders. But I do think that this prospective target is significant and sizable enough in and of itself that we are seeing some expressions of interest from other companies who are interested in it as a standalone. The other part of the equation here is that Barrick's Pueblo Viejo is in and around, or was in and around, 20 million ounces of gold, plus silver, plus copper. It's a monster, and so there's this ongoing question as to where does this stuff come from, and is this part of a much bigger and perhaps deeper seated system, because Pueblo Viejo is open pit, it is a high sulfidation epithermal, but is there some sort of perhaps porphyry source that sort of addresses how this stuff all got there? So it's a big, highly mineralized system that I think there's a lot of people who believe that there's still more to this out to be found.
Okay, and you guys, you picked it up about a year ago, I guess. You've done several different phases of work, surface work, geochem, geophysics. You're pretty much ready to drill now, to test this?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, when we first picked this up, there was a lot of anticipation and excitement on the target. It was big and broad, and you could see it from a satellite image sort of thing. But we knew that within that, we had to find the sweet spots, or vector in on where we wanted to focus our efforts. So geochem, geophysics, detailed mapping has led us to delineate what we consider now to be our top priority targets. There are 8 distinct areas that we intend to drill test. 5 of those we're calling sort of high priority targets, and they're priority because several layers of data sort of point to them, but they're also higher priorities because they are shallower targets, near surface, classic sort of high sulfidation epithermal type stuff. We are seeing some additional targets that are a little bit deeper, but in the junior space, sometimes those are targets better left for those with deeper pockets to go after. But yeah, so we've essentially just recently announced the delineation of those targets. We're starting to gear up now to get ourselves ready with some boots on the ground and get going on the drill program.
And I assume, the simple fact that you've announced those, and I happen to know, because like I said, I'm fairly close to the company, I know they have an extremely good and capable representative in the Dominican, and I'm assuming she's telling you the drill permits are pretty close, otherwise you wouldn't be running around at this point, you'd be waiting to hear from her.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, we've put, since closing the deal, we've put 7 or 8 months into getting ourselves prepared to this point. So I wouldn't leapfrog all of that to just start talking about targets that we'll never be able to drill. So we're comfortable that we've gone through the processes in within the Ministry of Mining and Environment down there, and by all accounts we're very close here. It's a matter of sort of ticking a couple of extra boxes, but I'm reluctant to put a specific timeline on it, but I think we're quite close, and at the moment we have those permits because of the there's no seasonality here. You can go to work pretty much year round. Because of the existing mining operation in the neighborhood, the infrastructure is incredible. The topography is really quite manageable, so I don't see any major delays once we've got the permits in getting a drill contract and getting guys access to the sites and getting ready to go.
Okay, it sounds like a great story. I'm biased, obviously. I own a ton already, but very simple, straightforward, high risk, high reward drill speculation. If you're interested in that kind of play where it's not a slam dunk, but if things hit, the valuation can move very, very fast in this type of a deal. If this is the kind of thing that interests you, I think you should take a look at Precipitate. It's PRG on the Venture Exchange. Thanks for coming by, Jeff.
Thanks, Eric.